Well, tonight, minority in parliament vehemently demands withdrawal of government's Cedi levy on petroleum product, describing the policy as hypocritical, draconian, and a midnight robbery.
The hypocrisy and the ill intent from the beginning has now been exposed by their confusing reasoning.
It's just simple wickedness. And we'll continue with our advocacy to government to withdraw this levy and adopt less painful and more pragmatic options.
Oh yeah, the defense from the majority side.
Why did they walk out? What were they afraid of? And they should stop throwing dust into people's eyes that they were not consulted.
Meanwhile, the drivers have suspended their threat to strike until June 16 over the implementation of the Cedi levy. We have fallout from a crucial meeting between government and the drivers a while ago.
If they fail, then we know that yes, they couldn't keep their word. So we hold them by their word. If we find out that it has changed, then we also advise ourselves.
Details coming up here on Top Story, brought to you always by Telecel, connecting energies. Well, tonight, the minority in parliament is slamming government's decision to impose a Cedi levy on petroleum product, calling it ill-conceived, hypocritical, and a betrayal of Ghanaians. They say the move amounts to, quote, midnight robbery, unquote, and are demanding an immediate halt to the policy implementation. The Energy Sector Levy Amendment Bill, which has already been passed by Parliament and assented to by President John Mahama, was expected to take effect today. But government was forced into a temporary U-turn following fierce opposition from transport unions and the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies. Already, commercial drivers are threatening to go ground their vehicles in less than 24 hours if the levy isn't withdrawn. And we understand that the transport unions have postponed this particular threat. Government, we understand, has also been holding emergency meetings in a last-ditch effort to avert the strike. Tonight, the minority is calling on government to put the brakes and return to the consultation table. Let's head to Parliament now, where members of the minority from the Energy and Economic Committees held a joint news conference earlier today. My colleague James Aveji was there and joins us live with details. James, let's start with the Energy Committee. What exactly is your concern about the fuel levy?
Well, Bryce, so the ranking member on the Energy Committee, George Kwame Abuaje, is the one who spoke on behalf of the committee. He first indicated that as we speak, it is not clear what government is taking this tack for. He first indicated the president's position on this when he spoke in Abidjan, stating that this is for the clearance of the energy sector, legacy debt. But I also cite an example of the energy minister, John Jinapor, who indicated that this is not for the settlement of this debt, but rather for the fuel purchasing, funds for purchasing fuel to power the plants for generation of power. And then he went ahead to make the point about how all of this constitutes deceit, inconsistency, as well as a betrayal of the trust of the public as government went ahead on the night of Tuesday to pass this particular bill.
Today, we have come full cycle on the energy sector levy. This hypocrisy, this unethical behavior will not be allowed to pass. The NDC hypocrisy has now been exposed by the fact that in their bid to justify what they knew they will do, they have now come up with confusing explanations as to why this levy is needed and inevitable. His Excellency President Mahama on May 13, 2025, at African CEO Summit in Abidjan, here's what he said, and I quote, "We are using the proceeds from the energy sector levy to pay down the arrears," unquote. Members of the press, which is which? Is this levy to pay debt or to buy fuel? The NDC has forgotten that they had announced earlier that they will finish the payment of the energy sector debt by December 2026. His Excellency President Mahama at the summit in Abidjan also said, announcing at the conference that he will clear the energy sector debt by December 2026. At the time this was announced, they had not told the people of Ghana that they were going to introduce a levy to attempt to do this, assuming this levy is for debt payment. So is it that they had planned this levy all along and lied that they won't impose a levy?
Now, James, the Economy and Development Committee also weighed in on this debate. But why are they describing this as, quote, midnight robbery, unquote?
The ranking member, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, made a juxtaposing argument between the E-levy and the energy sector levy as we have it now. He said, if you look at the E-levy, it is targeted at a section of the public who, if they perform electronic transactions, will be charged this particular tax. But as far as this particular, they call it doomsday levy is concerned, everybody is going to have cascading effect on every sector of the economy, including the poor, especially those who use trotro back and from their businesses. A reason he said this can only be described as a midnight robbery on the pocket of the general public.
Ghanaians will bear witness that this levy is being charged at a rate of 8% per transaction. 8% per transaction. And this makes it one of the highest tax rates introduced in Ghana in a single instance. If you study the history of VAT and many of our other revenue handles, you notice that at the first instance of introduction, sometimes it's 1%, 1.5%, or 2%. And then maybe as the years go by, you may find some add-ons and then a consolidation. For this particular levy, at the first instance, the government is charging the people of Ghana 8%. The government imposed a levy with an 8% transaction rate on the people of Ghana. It's just simple wickedness. And to think that this 8% is on every gallon of fuel, actually cascading down to every liter of fuel, to pay for the inefficiencies in the energy sector is simply a stab in the back of many people who believe the government at their word that they will not impose levies to pay for the inefficiencies in the energy sector. Now, for every 1 gallon of petrol product that you buy or diesel that you buy, this government is, because of this tax, going to take an additional 4 cedis and 50 pesos from you. That is 8%. We recall the NDC's claim that the then MPP government had done no work for Ghanaians when they are transferring their money, and therefore had no business in charging 1% levy on Momo transactions. So we ask you, what is the work that the NDC has done when you are buying your fuel, for which reason they are now charging 8% tax on it?
Well, James, they continued by accusing government of not being honest with Ghanaians. What's the basis for this claim?
In fact, the basis, as they say, is that you remember when during the vetting of the finance minister, when he proposed that they would be developing the economy by cancelling a number of taxes, they raised a question as to where government will be getting the revenue from, and he indicated that they will cancel the taxes but not introduce new ones. And so they believe that for government to turn around to introduce this new tax would mean that they have betrayed the public, the trust the public have in them, as well as, stabbing them at the back by charging 1 cedi per litre on every fuel. They've also been giving government some remedies in the absence of this tax in order to generate some revenue as well.
The E-levy was advertised in the budget. It was followed up with town hall meetings, and it onboarded extensive public consultations before the bill was finally passed in Parliament. This doomsday levy was smuggled through to avoid any form of public engagement, consultation, or scrutiny. It was neither advertised in the budget nor in the main order paper for the day. And that's why we say that this amounts to midnight robbery. The E-levy had an effective rate of 1% per transaction, yet it was described as pickpocketing. This Dumsor levy has the effective rate of 8% per transaction. And that's why we say that it is midnight robbery. The E-levy avoided transactions that were not in excess of 100 Ghana cedis, you will recall. And the argument that was canvassed at the time was that we had to create some room for the very poor to be excluded from it. Yet the E-levy was bastardized. The poor were exempted. This Dumsor levy has no minimum threshold. The poor are actually the most affected because, unlike the rich, for the poor, every single cedi counts a lot more. And that's why we say it's midnight robbery. The E-levy, number 4, was payable only by people who opted to do money transfers. This Dumsor levy is payable by all Ghanaians, unless you decide to work every day. Number 6, the E-levy was designed to yield approximately 2 billion Ghana cedis from persons who elected to do transfers or transactions. Now, colleagues, you are here in Parliament. You will recall the day that the E-levy was repealed. Our good friend, the majority leader, was on his feet, shouting his voice hoarse that the government has put 2 billion cedis back into the pockets of Ghanaians. I'm sure you recall. This Dumsor levy is taking from everybody over 5.7 billion cedis for this fiscal year. So if repealing the E-levy put 2 billion back into the pockets of Ghanaians, what does introducing the Dumsor levy that takes away 5.7 billion do? In his own words, this government is taking 5.7 billion Ghana cedis from the pocket of Ghanaians. And we think it is very dishonest because if you claim that you are giving Ghanaians 2 billion back, which was so untoward, it was evil by the previous administration, how do you give back 2 billion and take 5.7 billion from the people? It's only the NDC government that does that, justifies it, and expects everybody to say that that is some smart economic approach.
Well, the minority didn't end there. They had their own demands of government. Listen to them.
The minority believes strongly that if this government is minded to pay off the energy sector debt, because you recall that part of their justification is that they want to pay off the energy sector debt. In fact, the president said he'll pay it off by December 2026. And we have just done the maths for you, that if you look at what is going to accrue in the 2 years, it cannot pay off the energy sector debt. But let us assume that they are being honest with that they want to pay off the energy sector debt. We think that what the government should do is to conclude the renegotiations of the public, of the power purchase agreements which were started by the previous administration, and to pass on 2 things, the fuel and capacity charges into the PPAs. Government should include these in the tariff calculations to eliminate the need for off-book debts that are caused by the take or pay clauses in the energy sector contracts that were signed between 2013 and 2016. And you will recall that that is one of the major challenges that has created this stock of energy sector debt. The capacity charges and the take or pay charges, which could not be included in the tariffs. And so every now and then a bill is sent to the finance ministry to pay, and that bill is accumulating. If the government is really intended to pay, one of the things it should do is to complete the renegotiation, move the fuel purchases and the excess capacity charges into the PPAs so that when people consume a certain realistic amount, then they will pay. Number 2, government should quicken the efforts to bring efficiency into the operations of GRIDCO and ECG to reduce transmission, distribution, and other technical losses. We want to advertise that we'll be embarking on the following. Number 1, we'll continuously engage the people of Ghana, civil society groups, driver unions, and the media to showcase the true impact of this draconian and negative levy that the government is imposing on us. Number 2, we'll continue to stand with the groups of honest Ghanaians, the driver unions, the Chamber of Oil Marketers, who are opposing the levy or asking government to pull back and to engage better and not to go by this midnight introduction into Parliament and using their numbers to push it through. We know that.
Well, so that is Kojo Pong Kromade, member. He is ranking on the Economic Committee of Parliament. Meanwhile, the majority in the House is defending the new levy. Chairman of the Energy Committee, Emmanuel Bejra, has dismissed claims that there was no consultation with the minority. He insists this is the most sustainable option to help government deal with the ballooning energy sector debt without overburdening the ordinary Ghanaian. On concerns about the potential hike in pump prices, Mr. Bejra says Ghanaians have nothing to fear. Listen to him as he makes that point.
We need close to 12.6 billion. And so the 5.6 billion is just half of what we are anticipating. The 5.7 billion that will be raking from the 1 Cedi on every liter is just about half of what we are looking for.
So the rest is coming from where exactly?
Additional funds.
So the additional funds will come from where?
From government. I mean, government has been taking care of the 12.6 billion all this while. There will not be any increment to the fuel prices. There will not be any increment. And you can take it from me as the chair of Energy Committee. There is not going to be any increment. All we are seeing is that there's going to be a further reduction. That further reduction was what we have factored into to make it one Ghana. And so, at the world market, as well as looking at our economy, the Cedi appreciating against dollar, we are saying that difference is what we are using to buy fuel.
All right, you hear the chairman of the Parliament's Energy Committee, Emmanuel Bejra, there. But let me bring in Dr. Riverson Opon, who is CEO of the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies, to find out from him if that is true. I'm grateful to you, sir, for joining us here. We understand that the 1 Cedi levy will not result in any increment of fuel prices. Is that how you understand it?
Thank you so much, and good evening to you and your listeners. I think we need to do proper education to the public. Forecasting a new window today against the next window to claim that prices will be the same or go down or go up is still premature. Since the window we are working within will give us a proper forecast and anticipation on Thursday or Friday. Okay, and that is when we will actually understand how the world market price is behaving. It is stable, powerful, and if everything standardized, or in other words, remains the same, then it means that the 1 Cedi will be added as a levy to the pump price. So where do we see the no impact? And if we had indeed accepted the implementation yesterday, obviously Cedi being stabilized and with the current status quo of the window, believe me, fuel price would have gone up. So it depends on where or which spectacle our government is looking through.
The argument is that there will be some savings from the reduction from the world market, and that's why they feel that there won't be any sort of increment.
That is why I'm telling you that we already have a window which is working, okay? And I'll give a caveat. I mean, assuming everything remaining equal, because within this window, the price of the world market is not necessarily going down. It's just stabilized. So if we're applying this same window, okay, then the 1 Cedi would have been an additional levy to be added to the pump price. So do the mathematics. It is next window that we are expecting that probably with the forecast, in the world market, things might be, but at this point, it's too early for anybody to even try his or her bet on that.
All right, so it means that we should be ready to pay more if the case, if this implementation starts.
Yeah, and you see, let's go to the fact that we are in we're in a regime where things look bad in the energy sector, and things have been looking bad for a long time. It's not even the first time we are having this kind of conversation. Exactly 4 years ago, in your own beloved station, Joy, one Saturday, we discussed this, and we actually told the government that we should be careful with the way we are going. You understand? So I think that's a tangent we need to look at. Okay. Not just that the city is doing well, what market prices are coming down, so let's add one city and with no impact.
Okay.
Remember, we moved from 7 cities to where we are today. You understand? And we are nowhere near the 7 cities that we've actually jumped from. Let Ghanaians be sympathetic that this is the problem, and we want to be patriotic. What if the flat price doesn't behave the way you are anticipating? Because I really don't like working around prices that you and I don't have control over.
So that's Dr. Riverson Oponda. He's CEO of the Chamber of Oil Marketing Companies, making the point that, well, it's not accurate to say that there won't be any, increases if the levy is being implemented. Let me bring in the ranking member on Economic Committee of Parliament, Kojo Nkrumah, joining us here. I'm grateful to you, sir, for joining. Now, you've proposed that government must renegotiate power purchase agreement and pass on fuel and capacity charges into the PPAs. And these must be included in the tariff calculations. But that is exactly what government says it doesn't want to do. Why do you insist this is the way to go?
Why do you want to, first of all, good evening to you and to your listeners. Why do you want to go and buy a product at $10 and come and sell it at $7 and then accumulate a debt of $3 on the side and then tax the people to pay for the $3? When you know that if you pass on the full $10 to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, they will interrogate the operations of the power producers, compel the power producers to absorb parts of their losses, and pass on only the realistic price to the consumer at home. That is the more efficient way to do it. Part of the problem is that the government, the same government that is in power today, when they were in power between 2013 and 2016, they signed power purchase agreements in which they opted to provide fuel separately, in which they included excess capacity charges separately to be paid by government. That is what crystallizes as the major components of this energy sector debt that we are saddled with. But if you were to put them in the PPA properly, what will happen is that it will go before the PURC. The power producer will go before PURC and make a justification. And PURC will not allow them to pass on their inefficiencies to the Ghanaian until they fix it. You are not doing that. You are keeping the debt on the side and now taxing Ghanaians at 8% per transaction to go and pay for it. And that is why everybody who is looking at this from a non-partisan point of view is saying that pull the brakes and let's engage better. You just played Honorable Bejera's voice in which he claims that there will be no increase in fuel prices. The experts in the operation are telling you that that is not correct. You can say that for the next window, not even for this window. And by the way, the next pricing window is just a short-term window. What does the medium to long-term say about fuel prices? Does it necessarily suggest that crude oil prices on the global market is a dead deal, that it will continue to come down? So there are a lot of factors that must be analyzed. That's why everybody is calling on the government to pull the brakes for more analysis and discussion. But the government believes that they have the goodwill, they have the numbers in Parliament, so they will ride it through. And that's the unfortunate situation we find ourselves in.
But this PPA option, is it an easy thing to do? If it is, why couldn't your government do it?
Oh, governance is not easy, first of all. It's difficult. That's why you take it up that you do it. Number two, when our government took it on, we succeeded in renegotiating some, not all. We are not the ones who said that by 2026 we'll finish paying the debt. It was the NDC government and His Excellency President Mahama, who announced that he will pay the debt off by 2026 December, we announced a different strategy that, among other things, we're going to reduce our reliance on thermal power by increasing our reliance on renewable energy. You recall the 2024 manifesto position, because we could foresee this coming. At the time, they laughed at us and mocked us. Now they are here, and their answer to the problem is not to negotiate, not to go renewable, but to tax Ghanaians to pay for the inefficiencies of the energy sector. And this is something they swore heaven and earth they will never do.
I'm grateful to you, Kojo, for joining us here. Kojo Ponkruma is ranking member on the Economic Committee. Let me bring in Kofi Akonoko, who is member Energy Committee. Kofi, now, how do you answer the question of justifying giving 2 billion cedis to Ghanaians through the cancellation of E-levy and now taking 5 billion back through this 1 cedi on a litre?
Well, thank you, Kojo, and then greetings to your listeners. And then let me say hi to Kojo. Kojo happens to be the ranking of the committee of which I am the vice chair. But for Kojo's sake, let me assure Kojo that we will continue the negotiations on the PPAs. And it's something that this minister has committed himself to. And also to assure Kojo that, we are a sensitive government. And tomorrow, based on how good we are handling the finance minister, the governor of the BOG, and this government is happening the economic situation, if tomorrow we wake up and then the calculations we did is out of place, it will not be difficult for us to come back to Parliament and review this amendment. Unlike them, that we have to chase them to review the E-levy. And also, one thing Kojo is forgetting...
Kofi, how do you quote, for a lack of better word, demonize E-levy, but want to celebrate 1 cedi on a litre?
Could you come again?
I'm asking, how do you, for a lack of a better word, demonize E-levy, but to say that Ghanaians should accept 1 cedi on a litre of petroleum product?
Could you, one thing that we are forgetting is that when the MPP took over from 2016, upon all the bills and taxes they implemented, which was more than 6 at the first year, Ghanaians never complained. The issue with Ghanaians that we should understand is that Ghanaians would never have a problem if you implement taxes on them and make sure you put those taxes to use. And that is what we'll do. E-levy was implemented in their 2nd year, and Ghanaians were against it because they had not proved us right with the initial taxes they had implemented. So, Kojo, if you should go out in the street, that's why I'm not surprised that GPRTU has reversed and decided to suspend the strike. Because at the end of the day, how much is the cost of fuel at the pumps? Kojo, one thing we are forgetting is that we are not only saying that we are putting this 1 cedi on a litre and leaving the rest. We are committed to ensuring that there's production of gas. And that is why there's the proposal to build a 2nd gas processing facility.
Okay. Kofi, I'm grateful to you. He is a member on Parliament's Energy Committee. Duncan Amoy is joining us here. Duncan Amoy, Executive Director for COPEC. Duncan, from the consumer point of view, government says there won't be, but the oil marketing company says there will definitely be an increase. Should we expect, what will be the impact on the consumer if this is implemented?
Well, I do think that we should face the reality. And the reality is that on the 16th, which happens to be the 2nd window for June, where price adjustments are likely to happen, indications we have currently suggest that pump prices could go down. You would need, however, to do a 12 to 14-day weighted average to be able to come up with your indicative prices for the following window, which starts on the 16th. And so it will be early days yet to put a firm figure on how much we are expecting the drop to be. And so there is a possibility prices will go down. Would it be 20 pesos? Would it be 30? Would it be 40? Would it be 50? I don't get an indication as of now that we could get the 1 Ghana cedi reduction.
I'm grateful to you. Duncan Amwa is the Executive Director of COPEC, the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. Up next is news.